From Derrick Rose's injury-affected career to Michael Beasley's massive dip in form after getting addicted to marijuana, here are some NBA players who never lived up to their hype. Starting with Otto Porter Jr. When you think of NBA players who never reached their potential because of injuries, Otto's someone who always comes to mind. The 3-and-D wing was picked up by the Michigan Wizards in the 2013 NBA draft, but he could only play 37 games in his rookie season after suffering a hip injury. Porter did play consistently during the 14-15 and 17-18 campaigns, averaging roughly around 13 points and 6 rebounds per game, but those weren't the kind of numbers he was brought in for. Yeah, he did improve his performances a lot and was consistently putting these numbers on board, yet they still weren't enough. Since then, Otto's been in and out of the game because of injuries and could never live up to his hype. If he had played the same way he did before being injured, we would have witnessed a special player. He plays for the Toronto Raptors now and isn't having a great time with the team. It was announced in January that he'll miss the remainder of the season after a foot injury that required surgery. So you can really get an idea of what his career's been like. At least his career was ruined by injuries. The next player had no such excuse. I'm talking about Kyle Kuzma. The way Kuzma entered the NBA was just astonishing. He was coming into the league after having one of the best summer league campaigns. There were a lot of expectations for him because of this, but many people think that he should have done a lot more by now. Just listen to this. Kyle averaged 17 points per game in his first 2 seasons in the league. He took no time in becoming a fan favorite while playing for the Lakers. He was expected to reach all-star heights in no time, even though he won a championship in only his 3rd season. Individually, it wasn't a great one for him. Kuz averaged a career-low 12.8 points and 4.5 rebounds per game, and when Davis joined the Lakers, he couldn't make the most of his opportunities he was provided with, so the team had to let him go. He still has a long way to go in his career, and I think he can still improve a lot. He just needs to get things together and build on what has been a promising season. I'm waiting to see how well he responds to all this pressure. Speaking of pressure, the next player had none of it in his career, but still somehow failed. You guessed it, Carmelo Anthony. You might be surprised after hearing his name, but it is what it is. It's the hardest one for me to write, because Anthony was on a much higher level than all the players I'm gonna talk about today. He's a 10-time All-Star and 6-time member of the All-NBA team. I don't have much doubt that Carmelo will be in the Hall of Fame once he retires. He's as talented as anyone on this list, and that's the reason I'm talking about him today. Sometimes it really is unfair to hold people to such a ridiculously high standard, but then there are guys like Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Kobe Bryant, and no one ever questions their legacy. It's because they led their teams deep into the playoffs and showcased their talents in all aspects of the game. But Melo could never do that. He was a pretty good scorer, but an average defender, and he could have been an even bigger player if he improved that, because he had all the talent in the world to do so. This is the reason why his name won't be taken alongside other all-timers, and he isn't the only one who won't be named alongside those guys. Derrick Rose also won't be, but it's not because he lost interest in the game or all the fame got to his head. It was because injuries never left him. I mean, he went from the guy who won an MVP award at only 22 years of age in 2011 to a guy who can't even stay consistent anymore. After becoming the youngest ever player to receive an MVP award from the NBA, people expected the world from him.
It is my pleasure to award to you the Kia NBA 2010-11 MVP trophy.
Fans even thought that he'd go on to become one of the greatest point guards of all time, but injuries stopped him in his tracks completely. Rose's battle with injuries started soon after he lifted the MVP award, and it has been the same since. He hasn't been able to replicate his MVP winning campaign ever again, and I don't think he ever will. If it weren't for injuries, you can't even imagine the heights Rose could have reached. He could have easily won a championship for the Bulls during his time with the team. team, but he hasn't managed more than 20 points per game since the 13-14 campaign. The next one on my list is certainly not a veteran. He's actually the youngest player on my list, the Australian star Ben Simmons. And if you ask someone who's just started watching basketball, they'll say that Ben's a great player. But if you ask someone who's been watching the game for a long time now, they'll say he isn't. And obviously, I'll side with the old-timers because they were there when he was drafted. He was drafted by the 76ers in the 2016 NBA draft, and he immediately stunned the world by winning Rookie of the Year. He was being compared to the likes of LeBron, Jordan, and whatnot. And that's why a lot of people won't look at him as a great player, but as someone who failed. Maybe the pressure of being that good got to him, or maybe the fact that he refused to improve his game, but he hasn't lived up to his hype. The good thing is that he's still only 26, so there's a long way for him to go. He's already been selected 3 times as an All-Star, and there's much more left for him to do.
They like where they're headed. They know they need to fill some holes, but they're going to ride with it. Consistency matters. Nice lead. This time Dinwiddie sets up Ben Simmons with the lob.
Speaking of someone who has a long way to go, the next player I'm going to talk about doesn't. Andrew Bogut. There's no doubt that Bogut had a successful career, but not one you'd expect from a #1 overall pick. He had some of the best moments of his career during his time in Milwaukee. Bogut also made the All-NBA third team in 2010 after averaging 15.9 points and 10.2 rebounds per game. And that was his best year. After that, his performances took a massive dip due to some serious injuries that he suffered. He basically lost all of his offensive abilities after those injuries. Overall, if you look at his career, he did have a good one, just not good enough to escape this list. To round it off though, I want to talk about someone who could have been a great player. Yep, Michael Beasley, who entered the league as one of the most talented players in the draft class of 2008. He could do everything. A 6'10" wing who handled the ball like no other. Michael was a nightmare for opponents as soon as he stepped onto the court, but along the way, it looked like he'd lost interest in the game. The desire for him to improve was long gone, and this is what haunted him truly. What's even worse is that he was caught with marijuana on multiple occasions and even went to rehab. In one game with the Lakers, he even forgot to wear his in-game shorts. Imagine that! The whole crowd was laughing, but after he explained why this happened, and explained that it was an emotional time for him and he wasn't focused because his cousin had sadly passed away before the game and he just wasn't in the right place. Beasley's had a lot of ups and downs throughout his career, and that's probably why he still finds himself without a team. All that was missing in his career was proper guidance. If he had received that, Beasley could have been a different beast. That's all from me on NBA players who never lived up to the hype.